Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another podcast of Lighting the Candle, A World That Works. Kind of an interesting thing we're going to do today, a little bit different than our normal panel. We have a very special opportunity here for a one-on-one with my really good friend, Vanessa Lewis. Now, you're going to hear a little bit more about Vanessa in a minute or two, but the two of us have been working on different projects and working with an artist that I have represented, and I'm actually still representing him, Vanessa. I didn't know if you knew that or not. But the whole idea here is we're having these conversations to kind of interrupt the noise out there that sounds like people don't care too much about each other anymore. Quite frankly, everywhere I go and what I see, people really do. And so this is for you. This is an opportunity for you to find empowerment, have your hearts and souls fed a little bit, and maybe go away with some questions about, how can your life better support you and how can you be more empowered in your day-to-day whatever it is, struggles and the wins. So that said, before I introduce Vanessa, I'm going to set the stage for our conversation today. There is so much out there with regard to media, whether it's printed media, magazines, newspapers, that sort of thing, printed media on the net, all of the clickbait stuff that we get, where you click to see, oh boy, Johnny Depp is no longer here. He's checked out, well, only to find out that you're going to a page of advertising. So what I'm wondering, because you're going to find out that Vanessa writes for a living, and that said, she has an awful lot to bring to the table here in terms of ideas, personal experience, and maybe her take on things. Vanessa?
Yeah, sure. So thanks again, Bill, for having me on. It's kind of fun today. We're doing a little bit different from what we usually do on the Lighting the Candle podcast, where we usually have a group of us, kind of a panel of us sitting around chatting. And today it's just you and me, Bill. So, or Bill and I, whichever is the correct order there. I'm not sure, but that's what happens when you, like Bill said, when I write for a living. So when you're knee deep in words, day after day, you kind of forget um, you can't see what's in front of your face a lot of times. So, so apologize to any of the grammarians out there, but yeah, so glad to be here.
It's really good to have you. So I'm just going to put a question out. In terms of what you're seeing, do you spend much time on the internet, Vanessa?
Oh, I spend a lot of time on the internet. Yep.
Is there a theming for you, like, the tone of voice of people and what generally is passing for news? Is there any kind of generality that seems to come to mind for you?
I'm not sure what you're asking, Bill.
Well, when you're on the internet and you're working, I'm sure you see advertising. You probably see opportunities to go and read news stories from dozens of different outlets. Is there
Okay.
what would you say is the kind of the voice and the tenor of most of what you see on the internet, if there isn't?
I mean, the thing that comes to mind first thing as you're asking me that question is there's a lot of, well, what you were, basically what you were saying in the introduction with a lot of, hey, just different different things, different images, different headlines, different noises, just trying to grab your attention. And it's overwhelming. So there's ways that based on your own personal computer settings or phone settings or however your browser settings, there's ways to kind of quiet down some of the noise sometimes, but the noise is coming at you constantly. So yeah, and it's all to get your attention. So that's what I see a lot of on the internet. Besides the there's things called clickbait articles, which as a copywriter I'm familiar with. Thankfully, I haven't really had anything to do with that because it feels very it feels like it lacks integrity to be, writing out an article that will get people's attention, especially when the article itself has nothing to do with what you just put as the headline. Sometimes that happens. But yeah, my overall idea of the internet today is just it's a loud world, and between social media and notifications on your phone and emails and text and just all the different varied ways we are able to communicate. I don't believe there's any such thing as over communication with two people in a relationship, or in a working relationship or a personal relationship. But in terms of when you've got advertisements coming at you, being bombarded constantly, it's a lot of noise, and it's overwhelming. And I think it turns us the other way. It causes us to become so aware of all the noise that's out there that we just sort of, we sort of go into whatever we're trying to approach on the internet, with like a tunnel vision. And so then we might miss certain advertisements or notices or notifications that were actually very important to us, or that we might have wanted to take note of. I think it's kind of backfired with the amount of primarily advertising that's coming at us. So that's kind of my take of the internet. Yeah.
So what, if any, social media do you look at daily?
Well, I mean, I would say, I know that I don't look at any social media platform on a daily basis. And I have, in my case, at least, everybody's individual, personal preferences. In my case, a lot of what I do with my work is I need to focus, and I need to really hone in on focus and get into, the flow, so to speak. So in my case, I turned off a lot of my notifications, including social media notifications, including noises on my phone. So maybe on a different case from a lot of people, but what was did I answer your question, or did I start going off?
You did. You said that
okay.
You don't spend an awful lot of time on it, but where would you say you do spend time?
Daily visiting. That's what it was. Okay. Yes. No, I do not visit any one social media account daily, to answer your question.
Fair enough. And so if you're on the internet, what are you doing there?
So in my case, I'll be, the administrative. I'll be answering emails, checking emails. Usually try not to check them without answering. But sometimes that's a little harder to do. But and researching, I might do some research. And then social media is, I like to use it actually, and this is actually one thing that's very good for, is as a listening device. So actually it can help me in some of my research, just to get a sense of how people are talking, what people are talking about, putting in a particular topic and seeing how people are talking about it helps me. Or just checking in with, friends and family and seeing what's up in their lives. Those are kind of the two main objectives for social media.
Sure. I'll tell you what, I spend quite a bit of time on Facebook. And part of the reason why that is that I have a lot of friends, many of whom I went to high school with or grammar school with back in the day, that we've been reconnected. So we've, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, annually, we go out to dinner together and just kind of, there's usually between 15 and 20 people that show up. We'll go down to Stonington to the dog watch, which is very beautiful, right on the water, the marina, or, a couple of other places that we've been to. But we have such a good time together, and we've reconnected almost like distant family, if you will, because if you think about it, I've been out of high school. Next year, it'll be 50 years since I was in high school. I graduated about 50 years ago. in 1972. So the really interesting part of it is those folks are on Facebook all day, and I've added a whole bunch of other people that are all around the world that are friends of those friends. And so I'm at the point right now with I don't know, just under 5,000 Facebook friends. And that's kind of an interesting thing. It used to matter to me how many Facebook friends that I had from a networking standpoint years ago. And I sort of gave that up, and I found out that of all of the social media stuff, for me, that's the one where I feel like I have the greatest amount of voting and veto power, if you will. I don't have to listen to anybody. I don't have to empower, negative posts. And, quite frankly, there's not a lot of so-called clickbait there that captures my attention. And there are also people who use the platform to express what I consider to be probably pretty radical political ideas. Not a problem because we kind of got into that mode last year, during the election year. But far fewer people, in my opinion, are up to that today. A lot of folks have gone through the sorting process of unfriending people who didn't think like they did. And that's another one of the interesting things that I find about any media, the platform of television these days, where cable networks, they are constituted to provide whatever it is that a particular group of people that will pay their advertisers, by going to the store and buying their stuff. And so in many cases, what I see happening, in all of these different types of media and so-called information sources is they're almost more like entertainment than they are, factual data. And I find that kind of interesting. I really find it kind of interesting when you stop and think about what the news programs used to be. I'm a little bit older than you are, Vanessa, and I can remember. I can remember, people like Walter Cronkite, Chet Huntley and David Brinkley and Edward R. Murrow. And I remember that there were codes of ethics in terms of what could be talked about on air and what couldn't be. And it was really important for them to not have an editorial opinion while they were giving the news. And they were very careful about stepping away from the microphone and putting across the screen something that said, in my opinion, or an editorial comment from David Brinkley or whoever, right? And now most of the people that we turn on and we listen to, and they're on YouTube and so many other platforms, they don't tell us when they're not telling us the factual data that can be corroborated and found someplace else in the world or on the internet. They're just basically saying this is how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, or of course, I mean, there's, and some consider it a conspiracy, but then I don't think it's really. I think it's more common knowledge now today, but that the media is just following a narrative. So it's more than this. It's more than them saying to you, "This is how it is." They're actually saying, "This is how we want you to perceive it." It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Vanessa, telling a story that isn't over when your broadcast period is over, that it can be reconnected with, and episode 2 next week or episode 3, and they're constantly coming back to pick up that chain wherever they laid it down, and here's what's been happening on that ever since. This goes all the way back, goes back to the Saturday matinees, right? Where they used to have these serial shorts like Buck Rogers and Tom Mix, and in between the feature movies there would be these 2 and 3 minute long serials that every single Saturday you'd have to go back to see them. Those were a long time ago.
Yeah, but so that's the same idea though of just taking, a piece of entertainment and just using that as I can't think of a better word, but bait, if you will, to or a draw to get people in to see the feature film. And in this case, that would probably sell more seats on a Saturday, right? Because the 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 um the short would be shown only on Saturdays during the matinees.
Something like that, just to get the seats filled. It works fairly well, and I kind of
Yeah.
find, you know, and at this point in time, I don't take issue or find fault with any so-called news network or any other
Hmm.
network that has
Hmm.
decided that they're going to tell a particular story. And it's really kind of an echo chamber with all the people that agree with them. Because the people who have a different experience or know that some of the information that's being passed along is not factual, they don't tune in again. There's nothing there for them.
Hmm.
It could be a little bit of a problem for people who aren't savvy enough to know that, yes, the 95 out of 100 people who tell you that they're a journalist, they're actually not. They're opinion people. They're actually talking about their experiences, their what they believe to be true, what they think their listeners want to hear. And 9 times out of 10 for those guys, they don't give you any type of a disclaimer that basically says this isn't news. I'm now going to expound on and pontificate on what I know so well, like I am right now.
Yeah.
So the next question that I have for you is it do you meet with people face to face these days, or is it mostly on Zoom or what have you online?
Oh my. So yeah, I have to say, I think that a lot of us are probably because of what happened with the pandemic, um, possibly, there's a term that came about. Um, I think it was in the later quarter of last year that was, or maybe even earlier, about Zoom fatigue. So I think a lot of us are just, because we had to take all of our videos and all of our classes and courses and all of our communications with family that we couldn't see in person online, and so, well, the next best thing, we'll use the FaceTime or we'll use, the Zoom or whichever. So I think that um, so in my case, I did, yes, I had a lot of those Zoom calls and, people that I would never meet in person, and I was able to um, meet, work with them and meet with them on things like Zoom. And that's just the way, it could have been even in a normal world if it's someone I'm working with from Florida, for example. But yeah, right now I'm actually, I would say most of the people are face to face, and I think it's because we're just so tired of having to have the technology screens between us, because even though they're similar, where you can kind of see people's facial mannerisms and you can hear their voices, and um, you're there's still that boundary that's between you, and it's an inhuman boundary. And I think there's nothing like actual physical human connection. I think that's a lot of what we um, had lost and really missed. And so, yeah. And also, the weather's warmer now. It's easier to get around in your vehicle. It's easier to, uh, just you want to be outside. And so, yeah. So I would say a lot of my meetings have moved to face for the most part. And I'm glad about that too. So
Well, it's
now,
gonna
are we still masks? Yes. Well, maybe some of us are, but
it all
are we still?
depends on who you talk to and how many days from last Friday it is,
Right. Exactly. So, yeah. Hmm.
Do you find now that you're meeting with people in person as opposed to on online? Do you find a different level of connectedness and relatedness? Do you find that people tend to be more warm and seemingly authentic when you're in person?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it could be just a feeling that someone would get, that I would get, but I do think so. I think that there's always been this, you know, and we were created long ago. We were always having in person meetings, and then maybe we'd have them on the telephone, and then at least you could hear the person's voice, but then you'd be working to get together soon for, and then there was email, and then Zoom, things like, the video conferencing came along. But I think that no matter what, nothing will ever replace that in-person conversation. Even when you can see the person in front of you, there's still that, that physical boundary, and that electronic, you know, um, even electronic vibrations and everything like that, when you're trying to meet online. So you've got this screen between you. So I think there's nothing like in-person communication for sure. And I think we do get different feelings and emotions from it. Um, just because, I mean, it's all about energy, right? You like to talk about energy, and it's uh, when you can actually feel that. You can't feel anything physically or viscerally or through the screen, but but when you're in person with someone, you can actually feel their energy. You can feel their warmth, feel their coldness. So yeah.
Do you find that people are sharing stories about what went on with them over the last 15 months or so, or not so much anymore?
That reminds me of 9/11. Like, that was on everyone's lips for months and years, and then yeah, and it was always, where were you when? And everybody knew exactly where they were as soon as they heard the news about the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of stories still coming up. I think so many people though want to just put it all behind them, and that's why there's this, even if it's an illusion, we're not truly back to normal, whatever that really truly is. But we definitely had gone into an abnormal state of being for a long time. I love that science has words for it, like they call it the anthropause, the great pause, or um, I forgot the other term I heard not too long ago. I don't know, but it's just interesting because it literally is, like the world just stopped. It was like being on a Ferris wheel, and um, at an amusement park, and when you stop and you're way up high and you can see the vision in front of you of, the rest of the park, but you can't. You're stuck up there for a little while. That's kind of sometimes how. Yeah, sometimes
That
how I
has
see it.
actually happened to me. I mean, not for very long, but there's at the beginning, it's like, wow, this is kind of cool. Look at what we can see. I've never really looked out there over that water before, and holy mackerel, there's
Yeah,
buildings lit up on that side. You can't see from the ground, and then
exactly.
15,
Yep.
20 minutes later, it's like, okay, so look at all the people collecting down below. I think they're wondering if one of us is going to jump.
Right, exactly. And I'm not a skier, but I kind of wonder if people should think that way with, the ski jumps and stuff too, the ski lifts.
Yeah, no, I,
So
I, I totally agree with you. Uh,
yeah.
I stood at the top of the Park City ski jump during the summer, and um, they had these rollers that people were going down, and I went up there just so I could look down the hill and
Uh-huh.
uh, and just see what it felt like. And the only two words that could come out of my mouth were, "Oh shit," you know. That is a long way down.
Right, right, yeah. And it probably looks a little bit of a softer landing if you're looking at it when it's covered with snow, but it's because you said summer, right?
Yeah,
So
during
yeah.
summer, everything was green, and the landing area was, they were skiing with these roller skis. Really cool thing, and it was fun watching them do it. But no, that being up there in that particular instance felt really
Yeah.
vulnerable, and it was like, okay, I'm careful when I'm climbing down here.
Right, right. Because if I fall, it's not gonna feel so graceful.
Yeah. So, with the opening up of things, Vanessa, what's been the one
Hmm.
thing or two things that have really been like, oh man, I really didn't realize I missed it that much?
Well, certainly the in-person meetings, I would say. I would say, actually, I used to love hugs, and I still like hugs. I like physical touches for the most part, but I thought that I would miss hugs more than I actually do. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. And then what else did I miss personally? Like I said, there's just nothing. It's just that this whole time I feel like it it was just so abnormal. We were almost being conditioned to be afraid of one another, and to be afraid of contact, and to be afraid of face-to-face contact. And also there was um, whenever we were wearing our masks, and I had someone say to me the other day, they said, take your mask off for a minute, because they couldn't recognize me. And then I said, okay, and then I could put it back on. But uh, it was just like this whole time, also the negative of it, I think, was that we were sort of, so it's a strong word, but we were sort of, we experienced being dehumanized in some ways.
Yes.
So definitely miss, coming back to everything that humanity is, which is certainly physical connection. Yeah.
Amen. Absolutely. It's a huge part of everything that we do. And when you stop and think about, I'm kind of interested that you said hugs, because that was number one on my priority list.
Kind of had a feeling about that about
Yeah,
you, though. Yeah.
you know me so well. And it doesn't matter to me. I love human beings, male, female, whatever. I love them
Hmm.
all, and I love hugging people.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about what you also shared was that you you discovered, well, maybe you didn't miss it all that much, huh? What did that feel like?
Yeah. Yeah. No. So that kind of puzzles me. It's interesting. No, I mean it's fine. Okay. So I guess it's kind of like this. I think sometimes it's in our culture. There's an awkwardness. Sometimes you feel like, should you give up? When you get done with um depending on the situation, depending on the social event that you're at, depending on the the physical, yeah, the situations that you're in, you know, if you ever have, which we all experience, that awkwardness of, well, do I hug this person now? I already hugged this person, but I'm really going to leave now. I'm really saying goodbye now. So should I hug them one more time? Oh, they want to hug me again. No, I'm serious. Don't you notice in our culture, there's been sort of an awkwardness about, like, when we should hug, or when we shouldn't hug, or what sex we should hug or shouldn't hug, or it's a family member, should I hug them again? Like, and everybody's family is different, you know. So I mean, like, my
That's a really
family,
wonderful insight. That's absolutely
my
amazing.
family, we get together, we hug, and when we leave, we hug, and it doesn't matter if you just had an argument or you're hugging, hello, hug, goodbye, hug. And I
Yeah.
know the very first time I met my husband's family, for example, I guess they're not really, or weren't really, big huggers. No, I don't think they really were big huggers.
Yes.
And the very first time I was introduced to them, they had no idea who I was. I was just his girlfriend, and I gave each and every one of them a hug. And it didn't, maybe it felt a little awkward to me, I'm not sure, but it felt like that was the right thing to do. And actually, thankfully, I think that had a little bit of it to do with them being really endeared to me, going forward into our relationship. But yeah, so that's one thing, is I don't feel like I have to face that awkwardness of, do we hug? Don't we hug? Do I hug this man? Do I wait for him to hug me? Should I just shake his hand? But do we hug the girls instead? and just shake hands with the men, or do we, you know what I mean? So yeah, there's some insight you might have not wanted to hear, but there you go.
No, that's all really good. That's all really good. So let me ask you a question. Do you have time to pick this up on the other side? And we're getting up to the top of the half hour here. I think you've really come on a particular topic that people at home are going to enjoy hearing more about.
Okay, sounds good. So recording another session?
Yeah, is that good?
Sounds great.
All righty then, let's say goodbye to our listeners and thank you guys for tuning us up again. Remember, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any place where you can find quality podcasts being hosted, we'll be there. And we're looking forward to hearing from you. And by the way, if after you've listened to a podcast, feel free to drop me a quick note on my Facebook page. Anyway, here's to good times coming and more talk about hugging on the other side. Thanks, Vanessa.
Take care, everyone.
All right, bye for now.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.